Ladies and gentle dudes, welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Shalnor Legends for the Nintendo Switch. Before we get started though, I do want to make it clear that this game was developed by a single person. Every role in a gaming development company was done by one individual human being. And considering that with gaming being an art form, we really do need to give the devil a lot of credit despite any critiques that might come up in the review. Shalnor Legends, as it's probably really apparent even by looking at the game's cover art, is based very tightly on the gaming classic Legend of Zelda series. And immediately starting off in the game, we're dumped into a situation where a certain character called the Keeper is challenging the intentions of the main character, asking if they really are certain that they want to participate in the trial. And I guess because saying no would make it a pretty short game, our character says yes and immediately starts off on her journey. And starting off our adventure, we're dumped squarely in the middle of a 3x3 square map, where following the only unblocked path takes us to a long-forgotten yet very helpful mystical sword. This sword will act as your primary weapon throughout gameplay, though later on you will be able to find access to a bow and a few different types of arrows. However, talking to the random NPCs around, some alive and some dead, let you know that the situation of the trial is one that can only be ended if someone finally obtains victory. So with a little bit of a Jumanji-esque imperative, our main character must finish a trial not only to save herself, but to save everyone else who's ever tried to participate, alive or dead. To complete these trials though, you'll be wandering your way through that 9-square map through 5 different unique environments. There's the more placid starting environment, and then other expected fantasy environments such as forests, swamps, and deserts. Each of these environments will have a couple different enemy types to confront, and a major dungeon with a major boss at the end. And it's by completing the game's 4 major dungeon bosses that you gain access to the 4 crests, which, when collecting them all, signifies your completion of the trial. But while slashing through random mobs in general combat, cutting grass for gold, and kicking chickens is something we would expect from any Zelda-like game out there, there's one thing that Shalnor Legends does very differently. You'll of course be able to find hidden chests, whether in dungeons or the overworld, that'll grant you certain gems to increase your health or even your mana bar. The biggest change that Shalnor Legends offers is in your equipment leveling system. Early in the game, you're going to find the sword and the bow, and you automatically have some armor that you came into the trials with. And so in this way, the Legend of Shalnor actually kind of brings itself a little bit more like an RPG. As you move from area to area on the game's map, you'll not only run into NPCs that grant you access to a bit of the backstory, but also grant you access to skilled craftsmanship in upgrading your sword, your bow, and your armor. As you scour the overworld map and crash through dungeons, every piece of grass you cut and every barrel that you crush will either contain gold or possibly some sort of crafting item to let you brew potions or upgrade your equipment. And whether that be adding damage to your sword strikes, decreasing the mana cost for your bow, or increasing your general tankiness with your armor, the further you get into the game, the more and more necessary these upgrades are going to become. Moving away from the game's general mechanics, the graphics and the visuals are exactly what we would expect for this type of adventure. The 16-bit game representations and the character animations are a little bit nostalgic and do touch the heart of anyone who grew up in those early gaming eras. The game's audio and soundtrack, though, while probably just as accurately representing the early era of gaming, isn't really anything of note. It is a bit repetitious and does kind of drone after a while. And as it seems that the note on audio has started to bring us into our critique phase, there are a couple of things that a gamer might want to note before diving into Shalnor Legends. The game itself is an obvious callback to the classic Legend of Zelda era gaming, and in so being, it holds itself to a pretty high standard. And based on gamer expectations alone, the level design and the dungeon dungeon puzzles and the type of mobs that you face are all going to seem fairly repetitious the further you get into the game. There are only a couple of different mobs in each different area type, and each of the dungeons seem to repeat themselves pretty much copy-paste in every single one of the areas. The environments look different, but the puzzles are largely the same, and really there's only 3 types of traps. You'll either be maneuvering over spikes, around shooting fireballs, or dipping back and forth between spinning blades. Moving on to the leveling system for the equipment, while this is incredibly unique, it does get to start to feel a bit grindy. For every single upgrade for either your weapons or your armor, it's going to require you to max out your gold bag before you can go to that craftsman and afford the next upgrade. And this does mean, in short, that if you continue to adventure after maxing out your gold bag, you're pretty much wasting your effort because you'll need every single coin you can collect to make your character strong enough to reach the end of the game. And moving on to the final point, the boss fights in Shalnor Legend probably aren't something that a player expecting a Zelda-like game would really come to expect. Each boss will have a massive amount of HP and require quite a few hits to take down. But instead of requiring a player to find out the chink in the boss's armor and use some niche skill to take it down, you'll really only have to outlast it trying not to get hit by projectiles or its movement patterns. But again, as with all of these critiques, these are critiques only based on a player that would be expecting a true Zelda-like gaming campaign. These games over the course of time have become so specific and so genre-heavy that any diversion from the true norm can come across as something that a player might not expect and therefore might not like. Overall, though, the game is both unique and interesting, and if you're a fan of classic gaming, though it might feel a little bit light, is still a pretty good game. But while I might not recommend it for its native $9.99 USD price tag, while it's still on sale for about $1 on the eShop, it's definitely worth at least trying out. But anyway, that does about wrap up the review of Shalnor Legends on the Nintendo Switch, so if you enjoyed the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or a comment to show your support. And don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. There are new and unique indies coming out literally every single day, so there's always going to be some new game to find out about right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.